The sun hung low over the jagged peaks of the Wyoming Rockies, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the parched earth. Amos Kane reined in his horse, a sturdy bay named Rusty, at the edge of his property. The day had been a scorcher, the kind that baked the soul and left a man questioning why he'd ever chosen this life of isolation. At 42, Amos was a fixture in these parts, a cowboy through and through, with sun-leathered skin, a jaw set like granite, and eyes that had seen more loss than a man should bear. His ranch wasn't much, a modest cabin pieced together from logs he'd felled himself, a corral for his half-dozen horses, and acres of scrubland that yielded just enough grass to keep his small herd of cattle fed. It was a far cry from the bustling spreads down in Cheyenne, but it was his, bought with blood and sweat after the war had spit him out like a bad seed. He dismounted with a grunt, his boots kicking up dust that swirled in the evening breeze. Rusty snorted, shaking his mane as Amos led him to the trough. The water was low, he'd have to pump more from the well before nightfall. As he worked the handle, his mind wandered to the chores still ahead, mending the fence where coyotes had been testing their luck, stacking firewood against the chill that always crept in after sunset. Life out here was a rhythm, predictable as the seasons, but lately, that rhythm felt off. Whispers from town spoke of trouble brewing, rustlers moving north from Colorado, men with no regard for boundaries or law. Amos had dismissed it as saloon talk, but he kept his Winchester oiled and within reach all the same. The sky deepened to a bruised purple as he hauled the last armload of split logs toward the cabin. That's when he saw her. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, a mirage born of fatigue. A figure, slender and faltering, emerged from the haze at the end of his dirt track. She moved like a ghost, one hand clutching her side, the other outstretched as if pleading with the fading sun. Amos froze, his load forgotten. Who the hell was she? Strangers didn't come this way. His gate marked the end of the road, beyond which lay only wilderness and wolves. She took a few more steps, her dress torn and muddy catching on the sagebrush. Then, as if her strings had been cut, she collapsed in a heap just outside the gate, her body folding into the dust. Amos's heart lurched. He dropped the wood with a clatter and bolted forward, his long strides eating up the distance. Up close, she was younger than he'd thought, mid-20s perhaps, with hair like raven feathers spilling over her shoulders. Her face was ashen, lips cracked and dry, and a dark stain bloomed across her blousy blood, fresh enough to glisten. He knelt beside her, his calloused fingers pressing against her neck. A pulse, faint but steady, alive. Then, but for how long? Questions flooded his mind. Was she running from something? Someone? The nearest town was 20 miles south. No one walked that far without purpose. He glanced around, scanning the horizon for riders, but the dusk swallowed everything in silence. No time to waste. Scooping her up in his arms, he marveled at how light she felt, fragile as a bird with broken wings. Her head lolled against his chest, and a faint scent of lavender cut through the metallic tang of blood. Unexpected, like a memory from another life. The gate creaked as he shouldered it open, carrying her toward the cabin. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of pine and smoke from the banked fire. He laid her gently on the cot in the corner, the one he'd built from scrap lumber years ago. It wasn't much, a straw mattress covered in faded quilts, but it would do. Lighting the lantern, he examined her wounds more closely. The gash on her arm was deep, ragged edges suggesting a blade rather than an accident. Her side bore bruises, purple and angry, and her breathing came in shallow rasps. Fever, maybe, or worse. Amos moved with the efficiency of a man who'd patched himself up more times than he could count. He fetched a basin of water from the pump outside, boiled it over the fire, and tore strips from an old shirt for bandages. As he cleaned the wound, dabbing away dirt and blood, his mind raced. Who was she? Her hands were soft, unscarred, and not the hands of a rancher's wife or a frontier woman. City folk, perhaps. But what brought her here, to the edge of nowhere? He applied a poultice of crushed herbs, yarrow and comfrey, remedies his mother had taught him before the consumption took her, and wrapped the arm tight. She stirred once, a soft moan escaping her lips, but her eyes remained closed, lost in whatever nightmare had driven her to his door. With her tended as best he could, Amos stoked the fire, the flames leaping to life and casting flickering shadows on the walls. He dragged his rocking chair closer to the cot, settling in with his rifle across his lap. The night was falling fast now, stars pricking the velvet sky like diamonds on black cloth. Out here, darkness brought its own dangers, predators, both four-legged and two. If she was running, her pursuers might not be far behind. Amos's fingers traced the stock of the Winchester, a familiar comfort. He'd guarded this land alone for a decade, ever since the war had ended and he'd returned to find his family gone. Our father hanged by raiders, sister vanished into the ether. Solitude suited him, or so he told himself. But tonight, with this stranger under his roof, it felt heavier, like a storm cloud pressing down. The wind picked up, whistling through the chinks in the logs, carrying the distant howl of a coyote. Amos's eyes darted to the window, where moonlight spilled across the yard. Nothing moved, but he knew better than to relax. He poured himself a tin cup of coffee from the pot on the stove, the bitter brew grounding him as he watched over her. Hours ticked by, marked only by the crackle of the fire and her uneven breaths. In the quiet, memories crept in unbidden. He thought of Eliza, the girl from his youth, with hair like sunlight and a laugh that could chase away shadows. They'd planned a life together, but the war had called him east, and by the time he returned, she'd married another, unable to wait for a ghost. The pain had faded to a dull ache, but seeing this woman vulnerable, beautiful in her brokennesses stirred it anew. Around midnight, she shifted, her brow furrowing in delirium. "No. Please. The river," she murmured, her voice a fragile thread. Amos leaned forward, straining to catch the words. "Caleb. Don't." A name, a lover, a brother. He dampened a cloth and pressed it to her forehead, the heat radiating from her skin like a forge. Fever had taken hold, and without a doctor or the nearest one days away he was all she had. He whispered reassurances, though they felt hollow in his gruff tone. "Easy now. You're safe here." Whether she heard him, he couldn't say, but her thrashing eased, and she slipped back into stillness. The night wore on, each creak of the cabin amplifying his vigilance. He rose periodically to add wood to the fire, his boots scuffing the worn floorboards. Outside, the world was alive with nocturnal sounds, the rustle of leaves, the scamper of small creatures, the occasional hoot of an owl. But beneath it all, Amos sensed something else. Attention, like the air before a thunderstorm. His instincts, on by years on the trail, screamed that trouble was near. He checked the door latch, then returned to his post, rifle at the ready. It was well past 2 when he heard it, the snap of a twig, sharp and deliberate, from the direction of the gate. Amos froze, every muscle coiling like a spring. He eased to the window, peering through the frost-laced glass. The moon had risen high, bathing the yard in silver light. There, at the edge of his property, 2 shadows detached from the darkness, a man on horseback, their forms hunched against the cold. They dismounted, tying their mounts to a post, and crept forward, rifles glinting in the moonlight. Amos's blood ran cold. Pursuers, no doubt. The woman's words echoed in his mind, something about Laramie, man after her. He didn't hesitate. Slipping out the back door, he circled the cabin, using the shadows for cover. The intruders were amateurs, their boots crunching loudly on the gravel. Amos positioned himself behind the woodpile, rifle raised. "That's far enough," he called, his voice steady as steel. The men whirled, weapons coming up, but Amos had the drop on them. "Drop him, or I'll drop you." The taller one, a lanky figure with the scarred face, sneered. "This ain't your fight, cowboy. Hand over the girl, and we'll be on our way." Amos's finger tightened on the trigger. "She's on my land. That makes it my fight. Now get, before I change my mind about letting you leave alive." The shorter man glanced at his partner, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. They were hired guns. Amos figured demean but not suicidal. After a tense standoff, they backed away, mounting up and vanishing into the night. Amos waited until their hoofbeats faded before returning inside. His heart pounded, adrenaline surging through his veins. Close, too close. Back at the cot, the woman hadn't stirred, oblivious to the danger. Amos resumed his watch, the rifle warm in his hands. As the hours dragged toward dawn, he pondered her story. What had she seen? What secrets did she carry that men would kill for? He didn't know. but in that long night, a resolve formed: he'd protect her, come hell or high water. The first light of morning filtered through the curtains, painting the room in soft gold. The woman's eyes fluttered open, green as the pines after rain, and locked on Amos. Confusion clouded her gaze, then fear. Who? Where am I? Easy, Amos said, setting the rifle aside but within reach. You're in my cabin. Found you collapsed outside my gate last night. Name's Amos Kane. She tried to sit up, wincing at the pain in her arm. I remember. The men. Alia, they're gone for now, he interrupted gently. But they'll be back. What's your name? Miss Alara, she whispered, her voice gaining strength. Alara Thorne. From Laramie. I was a school teacher there, but I saw something. A murder. The sheriff's involved, corrupt as they come. They chased me out, thought I'd die in the wild. Amos nodded, piecing it together. Rest now. You're safe here. I'll stand guard. As she drifted back to sleep, trust flickering in her eyes, Amos stepped outside. The day was breaking clear, but storm clouds gathered on the horizon, both literal and figurative. He saddled Rusty, rifle slung over his shoulder. Time to scout the perimeter, prepare for what was coming. The woman at his gate had upended his solitary world, and deep down, he didn't mind one bit. But that was just the beginning. As the sun climbed higher, Amos rode the fence line, his mind a whirl of plans and precautions. The ranch spanned 50 acres, mostly open range with a few wooded draws where ambushes could hide. He'd need to set traps, maybe rig some tripwires with bells to alert him. Back at the cabin, Alara's presence lingered like a ghost, her scent on the blankets, her vulnerability tugging at strings he'd long thought severed. By noon, he returned, sweat-soaked and dusty. Alara was awake, sitting up with effort, sipping water from a cup he'd left. You shouldn't be up, he chided, but there was no heat in it. I can't just lie here, she replied, her voice firmer. You've done enough. I need to keep moving. Amos shook his head, unpacking provisions from his saddlebag. Jerky, biscuits, a canteen. Not in your shape. Those men from Laramie won't stop. Best to hole up here. Let me handle it. Her eyes searched his face, curious. Why help a stranger? You don't know me. He paused, stoking the fire. Lost too many to do nothing. Besides, gate's mine. What crosses it is my responsibility. They talked then, haltingly at first. Alara spoke of her life in Laramie, teaching children their letters, dreaming of a quieter existence away from the town's underbelly of gambling and graft. The murder she'd witnessed, a banker gunned down in an alley by the sheriff's deputy, had shattered that dream. She'd fled with nothing but the clothes on her back, evading capture by sheer luck until exhaustion claimed her at Amos's gate. In turn, Amos shared fragments of his past, the Civil War battles that haunted his dreams, the family ranch lost to raiders, his self-imposed exile. Out here, a man makes his own peace, he said, gazing out the window. As afternoon waned, tension built. Scouts from town might return, reinforced. Amos fortified the cabin, boarding windows, loading extra ammunition. Alara helped where she could, her bandaged arm slowing her but not her spirit. Their hands brushed once as they passed tools, a spark jumping between them unexpected. Electric. Dusk fell again, the cycle repeating. Amos stood guard, rifle in hand, while Alara rested. The night passed uneventfully, but sleep eluded him. Thoughts of her filled the void, her resilience, her grace amid chaos. By morning, a bond had formed, fragile but real. Days blurred into a routine. Alara healed slowly, her fever breaking fully on the third day. She took to helping with chores and mending clothes, cooking simple meals from his stores. Conversation flowed easier. Stories of her childhood in Ohio, his adventures driving cattle to Kansas. Laughter crept in, rare and precious. But danger loomed. On the fifth day, riders appeared before this time, bold in daylight. Amos met them out the gate, Alara hidden inside. Turn back, he warned. The leader, a burly man with the sheriff's star pinned crookedly, laughed. The girls wanted for questioning. Hand her over, or we'll take her. Amos fired a shot into the dirt at their feet. Next one's higher. They retreated, but promised return. That night, under stars, Amos and Alara sat by the fire. I can't bring this on you, she said. You're not leaving, he replied, his hand covering hers. Not alone. The siege began. Riders circled, testing defenses. Amos repelled them with warning shots, conserving ammo. Alara proved resourceful, spotting flankers from the roof. Tension mounted, but so did their connection. Stolen glances, shared silences. On the seventh night, the attack came. Gunfire shattered the quiet, bullets thudding into logs. Amos returned fire, picking off one assailant. Alara loaded rifles, her fear masked by determination. The fight raged, smoke filling the air. As dawn broke, the attackers fled, defeated. Amos, wounded in the shoulder, slumped against the wall. Alara bandaged him, tears in her eyes. "You saved me." "We saved each other," he murmured. In the aftermath, peace returned. The sheriff's gang disbanded, rumors of federal marshals on the way. Alara stayed, her presence transforming the ranch from a lonely outpost to a home.